Hello, everyone. If you're joining us on the internet, we'll be started shortly. We have a cookie decorating class by Bacon Wonder at Creations Catering today.
And together we own Bacon Wonder. We are a cottage business in San Antonio, and we, I guess, specialize in sugar cookies, but we do almost anything. And today we are going to decorate some like traditional Christmas cookies. And I don't know if anybody else has, I know some of us have done sugar cookies. Have you done? Okay. So today there's not going to be a whole lot of flooding because we really want to just have fun and decorate. And sometimes if there's a lot of flooding, it can take up a lot of your time, and then it's hard to decorate on top of it because it's not dry. So we are going to flood one cookie, which is our reindeer, but we're going to talk a little bit about like our process, the recipes, and the things you have in front of you. So to start with, we did put, and we're going to do some edible marker stuff today. That's the black one. We did give you a pen too, so if you want to take notes, feel free. And then there's a sheet with a circle on 2 lines, and you can, if you want to write notes on it, you can. We're also going to let you practice too before we just dive into the cookies.
So just turn any of the cards over if you want to take notes. Okay. But this will, you're going to actually practice with the icing in a little bit.
And then to go over the royal icings, and you probably just want to make sure that you're going to have 2 red. One's going to be marked with a P. There are different consistencies for the different techniques that we're going to be doing. And then we have 2 brown. One's going to be marked with a T. And then a green. And then we also have 2 cards on there that give you some recipes that you can take home and use to do this at home. So the first one is the actual sugar cookie recipe. That's a good rollout recipe. It's not our exact recipe. We tweak ours a little bit with some special ingredients, but that's a good one that you can start with. Like we were saying earlier, we do refrigerate the dough for a couple hours so that when you roll it out, it's not too warm because you don't want those cookies to spread in the oven. Do you have any other tips?
Yes. So let's talk about the thickness of your cookie because that's usually a problem. When you're rolling it out, one edge is real thin, one edge is real thick. And so I went to Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever, and go to like they have some really nice finished woods, and I got a 1/4 inch thick, and then I just got a piece like this. I cut it in half, and those are my guides, and I put my rolling pin on those guides with my dough in the middle, and so all of my dough is the same thickness all the way across.
Mm-hmm.
It's a board, or
yeah, it's just a piece of board. I totally meant to throw it in the bag. I've had it for every class, and I forgot.
Yeah.
It's just a thin board, like a 2-inch wide. And they're about 18 inch, well, it was probably about 2 feet, and I cut it in half.
yes.
And so I just put one on each side, put my dough in the middle, and roll it until my dough is evenly,
And
pressed
how
out.
thick is
4.
It's a 4th, yeah. Which I think is it's a good thickness. It's not too thin to where your cookie's going to be super crunchy, and it's not so thick that it's too much sugar cookie when you eat it. I know they sell some fancy rolling pins that have like the rubber bands on the end.
Right, but they still don't get them.
Sometimes those are a little complicated. Yeah, this is a really easy, cheap way to do it. The other card in front of you is a royal icing recipe, which is the recipe we actually do use. And it's pretty straightforward. Only thing I would say is it's all about consistency with what you're doing. So if you're doing something that you want, like writing or like we're going to do a poinsettia, it's got to be thicker because you want it to keep its shape. So you're going to just do that by adding more powdered sugar. And if you find that you need something thinner, like when you're flooding, you're going to want to add water. So those are like your 2 tools that you use with the royal icing is either water or powdered sugar. It looks like everyone might know what flooding is, but for those who might not, it's just putting a border around your cookie, acting like as a wall or a dam to keep the icing from falling over your cookie, so that you get like that nice like even edge. And so,
And especially if you're gonna do, I used to do cookies with kids at home, you know, the grandkids and stuff. Let's not even go there. But the problem was is that you can't flood and decorate at the same time. So if you were gonna have cookies with your kids, I would flood them the day before and then let them decorate, because then they're gonna be more successful.
Yeah.
So.
unless you're going to do a Christmas tree, and in that case, they're going to want to throw sprinkles on it, and you're going to want to have it wet.
Yeah, so it just depends, but for the most part, you'll want to like flood a base for them and then let them decorate. It'll be more successful and everybody will be happy.
And does anybody have any other questions as far as like the process or ingredients or just general knowledge of decorating royal icing sugar cookies before we actually dive in?
On your,
You can ask questions if you come up with something later, just let us know and we're more than happy to answer.
on your sugar cookie recipe, you may have one of your own, and if you feel like it, the problem with the ones you buy in the store, they spread because they're shaped. But I think you could probably go back and add like a half a teaspoon of baking powder to that dough. You'd have to mix it up, you know. But the baking powder is what's going to help your dough be hold its shape. But you don't want too much. Just, you know, I put about 3/4 of a teaspoon.
And actually, I'll just do a little tidbit on color, because especially around Christmas time, we're doing a lot of red. And red and black are really difficult colors sometimes to achieve, because we used mostly Americolor, the brand Americolor. It's a gel. For black and red, I like to use Sugar Art, which is like a powdered, concentrated that's food safe. It doesn't change the it doesn't change the consistency or like the makeup of the icing. So you're not going to, because sometimes if you add too much coloring, it's going to either separate. When you flood it, it's going to bleed. And then even I've had sometimes where like it did not even dry. Like a day later, it was still wet. Also with the humidity, San Antonio, what can I say? Really just, it's crazy how much the weather can really affect that. But we do use a lot of Americolor. I know at the stores, local stores, you can buy like the Wilton gels. Those work too. The little liquid ones at the store, those are really hard. I mean, if you're starting out, you might just play around with those, but Americolor is great. You can get all that stuff on Amazon.
Or sugar what?
Sugar Art. Sugar Art, yeah. And they do like a lot of the pearl dust and stuff, like the edible pearl dust and things that you want to do if you want to paint gold and stuff. So that's a little bit about color. And so like today we do have like that red and the green. And so if you guys want, we can start on the reindeer. You guys want to flood? Okay. So again, you're going to want to pick the brown that has no tea. Because the T is going to stand for the tree trunk. Because this one's a little bit thinner. And this cookie, I picked the most complicated cookie for you to flood today. Right, there's a lot of edges and stuff. But oh yeah, so you notice your bags are not cut yet. Has anybody used tipless bags? Yes? No? Okay. Because some people use like actual tips. We kind of got away from that just because it was so much work involved with it. But what that means is you're going to have to cut your tip. And you want to be very conservative at first, because if you cut too much, we might have to put another bag for you. Or grab another one, because by the look on her face, we might not have extra bags. we do have extra icing, so if you happen to cut it too big, but you don't.
It's better to cut
Little at a time.
and go back.
So what I do is I just I flatten it out with the seam, actually again, not with the seam, I do it against the seam to try to get more of a round tip. I don't know if that makes sense. And then I'm just gonna cut just a little bit off. And if you want, before we do it, let's grab that practice sheet and just maybe make sure you're comfortable with how it's coming out. And so what we're gonna do is we're just gonna pipe an outline first, and then we'll come back and flood it.
So if it's not coming out, you might need to cut a little bit more.
It depends. So if overnight is typically what ends up happening for us, but I will say that one of the biggest enemies of cookiers or people who do cookies is craters. So if you are piping something that is a small section, or even like writing that kind of has like thicker sections, if you are able to decorate that cookie before it completely dries, you won't have crating, because what happens is once the cookie's dry and you decorate on top of it, it's going to pull the moisture down and you're going to get that crater. Also trying to use a little bit of a thicker icing on top, but that tip. So like if you're comfortable with it, and it's been like I've decorated a cookie before on top on the flood like 2 hours later. You just have to be careful, right? Depending on like how dry the cookie actually is, but that's the time that you would want to.
You don't want your tip to touch the cookie. Keep it right above the cookie so you have that.
You're going to kind of like touch down and then drag your icing to where the next point you stop at.
You don't want to fill it all up, because you'll want to save it for your reindeer.
Oh.
There should be plenty.
Okay, yes.
There should be plenty. I don't know if that.
Don't touch.
And I guess another tip, I find it easier to flood. They sell these little turntables that you can,
Saw those, yeah.
those really do help. Those really do help. So if you're ready, go ahead and just pipe an outline on your reindeer. No. So if you want to watch me, I'll show you what to do. You're just going to put a little ear, because we'll come back and do the antlers with a little bit of the thicker brown. And then we're going to put a nose on him later too, because right, it's Rudolph. He needs a nose. So you can really honestly pick any spot to start from. I usually try to find a point. And then if I need to stop, I find another point to stop at. So like if I start here, I'm going to follow. And I might stop up here at the ear and kind of reset and do the ear. I'm going to come down. And so you could stop there, because it's kind of a point, so it makes sense. And that's why you have the toothpick. So if you need to grab a toothpick to kind of, it's like it's a boo-boo stick. So.
So you don't do the antlers.
I'm going to wait to do the antlers. Now this icing is a little bit thicker, that if you're a little new to sugar cookies, you might want to start out thinner, but he's so small, I didn't want icing running over the edges. And so like I was saying, if you have like a point where like your icing is sticking up, you can just get your toothpick and kind of push it down. And so today we are piping and flooding with the same consistency. If you get home and this is something you want to try and experiment with, you might want to pipe with a thicker, like pipe the outline with a thicker so it gets harder faster, and then flood with a thinner. But hopefully you find that you're able to do it with the same consistency, because it just makes it so much easier.
And again, the thicker is just the more sugar.
Just more powdered sugar, yeah.
More water.
And sometimes you'll even find that when you're mixing your royal icing, sometimes I find that when I mix it, that's a perfect consistency to pipe with. But honestly, it just depends on your recipe and the weather, unfortunately, that day as well.
Yeah.
Though I'm just telling you, the weather plays such a big role.
I did that.
Yeah, I guess I don't have a plate. I could have used a plate. I wonder if it'd be easier. Does everyone see it pretty okay on the screen?
Do you want to play?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine. And honestly, you could probably, I've seen people who outline all their cookies and then come back and fled. Something that happens though is you'll see like the border, depending on how close, you know, like how close you get, which is fine. Some people actually like to see the border on their cookie. If you flood it right away, it's probably gonna like melt into the border, so you're not gonna see it. It's really just a preference thing. So if you want to and you're ready, go ahead and fill it in. What I like to do is I like to follow around my outline and work my way in rather than moving in sections. I'll show you right now.
Squeeze harder, because more will come out of your.
Okay, so you basically just do an outline.
A thicker outline.
You can see the TV, it's a really good, you can see.
Okay.
Filling it in. If you squeeze hard, it's going to come out more, which is good, because then it fills in easier.
Yeah, and you want to fill in as quickly as, you know, possible, because this is a little bit thicker. And you'll notice that it's kind of like bumpy and stuff. So this is what I like to do very carefully, not break him, because I'm going to give him a little shake. And then I have some little sections that I'm just going to fix with my boo-boo stick.
Yeah, fill it more and then shake.
Yeah, don't be scared because you have that border. Don't be scared, and it's probably pretty dry. Don't be scared to add a little bit.
Fill it all in and then you'll just pick it up and shake it. But shake it double.
Yeah, look at that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so you see how it just kind
Yes.
of swings out? Is he okay?
How's it going?
Yes.
Yeah, give it a good shake, or even tap it. But he's fragile because,
Slide it on the table.
yeah. And if you have little sections, like I did, I had a couple little sections that weren't touching. You can go back with a toothpick, or you can put more icing. That works too.
Okay. It's the same icing. You'll just, you might need to outline, you want to keep above the cookie, not touch the cookie. And then when you fill in, you just fill it in and push it hard. Okay. So, we're gonna swirl. Okay. You're totally fine. It's smoothing out, and you can.
Really, get it all filled up? A bit thicker. Oh, I'm just filling in the bubbles, but, there's so many bubbles.
Yeah, and maybe because somebody might find it would be.
Cut it a little bit.
Yeah, but it's small. I mean, shake it and see if it will.
Look, guess what happened?
Well, no, that's the people.
No, he's not. And I was like,
Like, really?
we're gonna make it.
How's everyone feel about their cookie? Frustrated?
So you
Good?
can imagine what it's like for kids. you know?
Yeah, I'm sure.
And so that's why it's important maybe to give them some that are flooded so that they can, because we did cookies last night here at the, they had like a Wausau or Winter Fest here, and we did decorated cookies, and
It honestly, it's dependent on the age too, and honestly, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. Most people are probably just trying to have fun with their kids and decorating cookies. Again, it was a little bit on the thicker side, just because this was the first. We never know like exactly who's coming in, and if it was any thinner, it would probably be everywhere. So you got the basics, and what you can do is at the end of the day, we're not gonna reuse these. You can take this home, and if you wanna add water to it, and if you have piping bags, or if you wanna go pick up bags, you can practice more with it. And so we are gonna,
Of course, we're gonna
actually, what we could do,
How did you smooth that out?
Yeah.
Well,
you wanna-
that's my problem, because I will want to fix it, and he will, have you shake?
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's okay. Now you get to practice on another one.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah, he is fragile.
So fragile.
He's pretty, but
Yeah. He's a fragile bird.
so I'll let you kind of catch up, but I'm gonna move on to slowly. So what we're gonna do is, since we have our reindeer flooded, the other brown is believe it or not, it's actually thicker. So he's going. This one's going to be the trunk of our tree, the antlers, and it's also going to be. We're going to make a wreath, and we want a nice thick outline for that. We don't want it to fall apart. So we can go ahead and put the antlers on a reindeer and then move maybe possibly into the tree. And the tree's going to be fun because it's really just going to be practicing lines, like that very basic essential thing that you need to do if you're doing cookies. But also, like, you can't really mess it up either because it looks like literally a tree that you would go cut down in a Christmas tree farm. It's got the pretty branches, but we want to put the trunk on it first. So, but we can.
So will they use the same brown on the wood of the?
Yeah.
tree? Because their hole will be bigger.
So this is the brown we're going to use on the antlers, the trunk, and the wreath. Yeah, it has a T on it. And you might want to squeeze this out to kind of get a feel for how thick it is. And you can tell that it is thicker. How'd that one go? How'd that reindeer go?
Better.
Cool, yeah. Sometimes it just takes sometimes it's like that first time and you're like, okay, this is what I'm doing, now let me try.
Yeah.
That even happens to me at home.
Really?
Oh yeah. And I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do, and I do it. I'm like, that didn't quite work out, but I know what I'm going to do now, so let me try it again.
Yeah.
I always bake a couple extra.
Yes.
Okay, so since we have our reindeer too, does everyone have their thicker brown open? And you know what? If you're not comfortable with how thick it is, feel free to use the other brown. I think they're both fine for the decorating that we're doing.
Is that
It's pretty thick, right?
Yeah.
If it feels uncomfortable, like it's too thick to be able to pipe out, feel free to use the other one. I guess there's not really a particular way, but I'm going to kind of look at what I did on the last reindeer. I don't know if there's too many things in this, but you really can just yeah. And because I'm using the thicker one, and so you can tell it's a little more difficult. I'll get it eventually. Like, there we go. And you can see that. How's it going? It's very quiet. Everyone's very busy. I hear you. You know what? A lot of the times too, what's great, if it's not to your liking, you can try and scrape it off. I've scraped off many cookies.
Can you hold it or bring it so I can see?
Sure, let me hold up this one because I think it's a little bit easier to see. That help?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. And I'm 100% positive that we have enough brown to, the one we used to flood, to do everything else with. So if you want to scrap that thick brown, feel free to do that. Is everyone done with antlers? So I'm gonna, no. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to the tree trunk. The tree trunk is pretty simple. So I'm gonna do lines because it kind of gives it that ridge. And it's gonna give you a point to work from as you put the branches on it, because it's gonna go down the middle. So I'm gonna start with one straight line just to kind of get me started, and I'm gonna go like either from the top down, from the top of the middle of the tree and down. And then I'm kind of going to bring them in. So I'm going to go all the way to the edge right here and pull this one in to the point like that. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So it's kind of making like a very, very tall triangle. Does that make sense? And then what you can do is, now that you kind of have like the outline in the center, you can kind of fill it in. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm just going to add a few more lines. That way it kind of gives it like that rustic. And something that we haven't discussed yet is, you'll notice that your tip on your bag your icing can start to cross on it. So cleaning, you'll see my paper towel's like real dirty with like icing. It's because I clean it off before I do something new. It really helps, because if your tip is not clean, it's gonna like curl on you as it comes out, and it's gonna come out like not straight. And this one, you don't have to even worry about it. You know, this isn't a flood. We want the texture on it. So you can add as many of these little lines as you want. I'm pretty happy with that. And what we're going to do is we're going to let that dry before we add our branches to our tree. And then the last cookie that we have the brown on is this really pretty wreath. And for this one, I'm gonna use the thick, but it is kind of like a circle. So if you wanna practice with the thick, or if you just wanna use the thinner brown, that's completely up to you. But you'll notice on this cookie, I did a circle, and it doesn't have to be perfect because I'm gonna come back and do another circle on top, and then another circle on top, so that it kind of gives it like that twisty kind of viney look that like wreaths have. And the circle, don't make it too big because we want to have room for our greenery. I'm going to use this. So look, there's my first circle. And you can see, well, that's not perfect, but it's okay because that's the whole point of this one, is it's kind of like a rustic, right? And you want it looks more realistic the more imperfect. That's fine. I mean, you could try to wipe it off. We're gonna put some ornaments in the center, so you try to leave enough room. You might be able to like maybe just put one later on, or you might be able to fit 3. I'm gonna put another circle. And it kind of just goes on top. And again, like, it doesn't have to be perfect because we're gonna put branches on it. And it's gonna have like that twisty, viney look to it. I did 2 times. You can do 3. My, like I'll show, with this one, if you want to get real fancy, this one, I'm going to kind of do this. So I'm just going to go like, almost like a back and, I don't know what you would call
Like,
this.
you know, you've seen those vine wreaths where they're just kind of intertwined? Yeah. Just kind of zigzag on it.
Yeah, kind of like a zigzag. Not really a zigzag, but kind of swirly. You may.
Yeah.
I think we're going to let our tree dry a little more and our wreath before we add greenery on it. So what we can do is do we want to do markers? You want to break from icing? So I have this cookie, and this is like a real popular trend right now. It's almost like decorating, like wrapping paper almost. And so what I did was, it looks like little tiny trees.
Oh, that's cute.
But feel free to do whatever you want. You could put polka dots. We have an ornament too, if you want to, later on, if you want to like write like an initial or your family name on the ornament. You get the creative freedom on that. I happen to love these trees, and especially since this is kind of like a traditional Christmas and we have the tree and stuff, I think the trees are really cute. So what you do is you just, here's my fancy marker. I was gonna say, I might show you on a piece of paper first. That might be. Again, so this cookie was flooded yesterday, so it's dry. If this cookie had been flooded an hour ago, you would not be able to write on it for a multitude of reasons. Because number one, your marker's probably gonna bleed because there's still a lot of liquid in it, but also like you're probably gonna punch through your icing and it's gonna all crack because it's not dry. So if you wanna write on cookies, and by the way, you can get edible markers. You can get them at H-E-B even. I think they have them in their baking section. These are a little bit smaller. I got this one on Amazon. it's got two tips. It's got a real tiny tip, and it's got like a little tip just like yours.
Yeah.
Those came from Shear Celebrations in San Antonio. They're like one of our go-tos for supplies. But Joann's, Michael's, they all have edible markers, and they're fun. Even for the kids, like if you do a stocking cookie and they can write their name on the top of the stocking, super fun. But again, this is dry icing, like nothing's gonna happen. So here's my paper. Well, I'll do it with the edible marker just so you can see it. But so I'm gonna show you what I did in a larger scale. I'm just like, it's just like a line like this, and I think I just did that. But very tiny.
And so you could kind of, you know, a big.
Do we do that before we?
Yeah, start at the top and do like maybe 4 or 5, and then like do in between, you know how you do.
Yeah, like so like it's kind of staggered.
Yeah.
But again, you don't have to do that. You could do polka dots if you wanted to. I think polka dots would be really cute. I'm gonna do the trees because I love the trees. And I think it goes well because we have the tree that we just decorated. So I got my first row done. I'm gonna jump down to the next row and put them in between. How are the markers working? Pretty good, awesome. They're what?
Like the tip is stained.
That's good. That's good. We haven't used that particular brand before, so that's good to know. Now I'm working on my third row, and I've gone back to the top section. Sometimes if I'm making cookies and the writing is really small, instead of writing it with royal icing, I'll use a marker instead, because we're talking real tiny. It's really quiet. Everyone's concentrating and coloring. I think this part is fun, to be honest. I'm gonna put one last row.
Oh, my imagination is like, put like that. I put a letter in the middle, but you know.
We are gonna add a bow. Once this dries a little bit, that's gonna have ribbon going down the middle. Or you can just put a bow on top. That probably should dry a little bit before we put, isn't that cute? I love that.
Oh, wow, you're fast. Oh, man.
Mine was more like.
No, I think once you finish it, it's gonna, don't worry about it. I've seen, but it's so cute. You can get a lot of inspiration just by walking into like Hobby Lobby, and you'll see patterns. Like you could even do like little upside down V's, and it would be, you know, it's not Christmas related, but it's a cute pattern. And like even with this cookie, 3 dots together, and then you move over and 3 more dots together, and I find that if I go to like Hobby Lobby or you know, like a craft store or something where you see like things that have textures on them or patterns, materials too. Like it gives me a lot of ideas of like, oh wow, that would look so great on a cookie.
Yeah.
So let's continue with the marker because that's a lot of fun. And we've got 2 more cookies that we're gonna use the marker on. So we're still gonna let, We should definitely put the marker on our wreath before we put our greenery so that the ornaments don't get in the way. But let's just go ahead and, because we haven't touched this guy yet. And he's super cute. I love this ornament cookie cutter. It's my favorite. It's my favorite. You'll see that my pattern's a little bit different on this one. Like I said earlier, it's like 3 dots.
Oh, that's cute.
Isn't that cute?
That's very cute.
So you can feel free to do that. You could, like I said, if you want to put like a family name on there, or like you want to give this to a friend, you can write their name on it, or polka dots. I'm going to do this pattern because it's super cute. I'm going to leave that right there. And the other thing that you can do is, because we don't have white icing, if you want to put like the little, you know, like an ornament has kind of like the ridges on like the top part where you hang it, like this, you know, the top part of this ornament, you could put lines on your ornament with your marker to make it have like that extra dimension, give it a more like realistic look. So I'm going to do that too. My cookie's a little bit broken right there. That's okay. And for this one, since I'm doing like the little 3 polka dots in a pattern, you can really just start anywhere. I'm going to start on one end. It's going to get quiet again, isn't it? Does anybody have any questions since we're... I think kids especially would have fun with edible markers.
Oh, yeah.
I do find like the ones at Joann's and like Michael's types of stores, they're a little more, the tips are a little bit bigger, which may or may not be like what you're looking for. Kids might be okay with that. I kind of like the smaller look. And then I might just add a couple and if I see a space. If you want a close-up, there's a really good close-up. And you don't have to put the lines at the top. I kind of like it. I think it looks kind of fun.
And you also can get the edible markers. Some of them come in like silver and gold shimmery. So
Yeah, we do a lot of metallic painting too. And there's lots of brands. Again, Sugar Art, what I was mentioning, they have their own line of like edible pearl dust, and you can mix them. We mix it with like a high, Everclear would be great, but it's really hard to get Everclear right now. Just with just everything going on, people have been using it like for sanitation and stuff. But higher alcohol content, the better. But you can mix it with the dust, and because it evaporates really quickly. Because if you use water, it actually can start to mess up your dry cookie. Like if you're trying to, like if you wanted to paint the top of that ornament, which I do all the time, like the cookies we sell, I like to paint it metallic, right? Because it's metallic in real life. I just use alcohol because it evaporates quickly. It doesn't mess up the icing on your cookie.
drinking alcohol? Any drinking?
Yeah, you don't want to use like rubbing alcohol. No, just make that clear. Not rubbing alcohol. Although I'd be curious, does it wouldn't it evaporate? I don't know. Anyways, just like Everclear, like even vodka.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to, there's gonna be some lines. We're just gonna use the last bit of our marker. Because like on our wreath, I have these really cute ornaments. There we go. That are hanging down from my wreath.
Is that the marker that you?
Yeah, that's the same marker. And so I'm gonna just finish with my marker so that we can start on some other things and add some finishing touches. I'm gonna put 3 lines if you have room. I don't know how. Oh, that's a tiny end. I'm gonna use this end.
Just like the 3, yeah, okay, 3 strands, like you could make.
I made the ones on the outside longer, just to kind of give it some like dimension. I also, if you want, I also add like a little triangle, because that's gonna kind of be the top of the ornament. Once we put that on there with the red. Does that make sense? Little triangle? It's really upside down, like that. Cool. Can you see that?
Almost looks like 3 arrows.
Yeah, pointing down. Yeah, for sure. That's a good way to. Great. So now that we've done a little bit of marker, we're gonna let all that marker dry because it is, I think you can probably tell, I can tell on mine, like even on the present, it has like kind of a shiny sheen to it because it just needs to dry a little bit more. Because if you rub it with your hand, you're probably gonna smear it. But we're gonna jump back to our tree because our tree trunk has dried. I mean, not completely, but it is dry enough that we can add our branches to it. I'm gonna move some of this out of the way so you guys can continue to see what's going on. And your green has not been cut open yet. Don't cut it too big because we're gonna be adding like tiny branches. I won't say tiny, but the smaller, the more texture you're gonna get out of it. So just be conservative when you cut first. And I will say that this is thicker, but I promise you it's worth it so that when you start putting branches, they don't start melting together. They stay separate and it gives it a lot of texture. I'll put this one right here so you can see it. And really, that is all we're gonna do. We're gonna start from the center and work our way out and just follow the cookie. And to be honest, I have some that like, because it's thick and if I'm moving quickly, they'll break. That's fine, just do another one right over it. Because the more you put on there, the fluffier it's gonna look. So,
Do you cover up your center?
you can kind of see it. So I'm gonna start by putting some, like for instance, I'm gonna start by putting like some that are kind of on the, I don't know if you can see that are
Underneath.
almost underneath. And as I add more, they're gonna move up the trunk a little bit. But if your trunk is showing, honestly, I think that's really cute. My trunk isn't showing on this one too much, but you can still see it through. It gives it that realistic look. So I just make them follow the cookie. And I apologize. You might be here a while. It'll be worth it, I promise. I actually think my tip might be too small. I find it like a little bit easier if I kind of just do a bunch on one side and space it out, and then I come back and fill in, and then I come back and fill in, rather than trying to do each section at a time, and it gives your first like layer a little bit time to get settled and dry. We'll be doing the same thing on the wreath. It's gonna give it a really nice look to the little branches that are coming off the wreath. See, that one curled. Come back. And you can, if you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm cutting my tip a little bit bigger because I just feel like it's not quite big enough. So now I've covered both sides. I'm going back and putting some in between the ones I already put. And I'm working my way in, out. Because if you work your way out in, I find that you might mess up your trunk as you stop your branch. Yes, honestly, let me show you. Like I've got some that look kind of funky on mine, and that's like A-okay. I turn my cookie, like I said, I have a little cookie turntable that I use, but I turn my cookie because like we all write a certain way. And some people write on a slant, some people don't. And so if you're trying to decorate a cookie like the opposite way that you're normally used to writing, it's difficult. So I turn my cookie upside down sometimes. And don't forget to clean off the tip. If you feel like the icing is coming out of your bag and it's like twirling out, you might have like a little bit of icing stuck on there that's like preventing it from. How do you guys feel about this thick icing? Okay, so I finished going back through, so now I'm gonna go back through again. You just keep going, and then as you get more on there, you'll see where you're like wanting to add a few more spaces. So pressure is important on this one for sure because it won't come out.
As it is thicker, it's easier if you need to, like you need to wipe one off, they come off.
Can you guys see that one side? Like one side doesn't look done and one side does. That's just by like adding more in between. So I'm gonna work on the other side. And what's fun about trees is then once you decorate it, you can, or once you put the branches on, you can do a lot of things with it, right? You could put like a star at the top if you had yellow icing. You could put snow on it, which I love to do. I like to put a little bit of white every few branches and then sprinkle some sprinkles on it.
You do on one side?
Do we have helpers out there? That's awesome.
I know.
The goal is for you to leave here with a hand cramp.
A what?
A hand cramp. I'm just kidding. There are some, I do a sweater pattern That absolutely. Also, I've done like macrame designs.
Oh, wow.
Talk about hand cramps, yes. So on this one, I left a little more of the tree trunk. I kind of like it. I didn't cover too much. I think my top needs a little more. How's it going, everyone? It's going. I left a little bit of trunk on mine. That's what I was. But if you wanted to keep, if we had more time, you could keep adding, and then eventually you're gonna get to the trunk, depending on how thick you made your trunk to begin with. But you could put some that are kind of going over it like this cookie, and you would see less of the trunk. The most exciting part is that you're gonna get to do the same thing on the wreath. It's gonna look a little different though, and it won't be as much. They're gonna be little smaller sections. You'll notice too on your wreath cookie, there's like, it kind of spells it out for you, right? Because it has like these ridges on the edges. You can see like on the edge right here. So it kind of guides you where you're going to put your branches. I'm going to leave the tree here because I know some of you guys are still working on them. Look at that. See, isn't that cute?
It is so cute.
Let me see yours. Oh, I love it. See, I love all the texture it gives. It's different than if you're just gonna flood it, right? You're just gonna cover it in green, and throw some red sprinkles on it. But if you give it that texture, it kind of makes it look real. Okay. So I'm going to do the same thing on my wreath because I want the wreath, to kind of match it. But like I said, it has a guide on the wreath, right? It's got like these ridges right here. So on each ridge, I'm going to put a sprig. Does that make sense? Let me show you on this one. So each ridge has like a few that go out. And I do the same thing that I do on the tree. I'm going to put like 3 or 4. And even on the inside, and then I'm gonna come back and put a little bit more to give it a little more texture on top. So like the first, and I also work my way, right? So I just did like 3. You see that? And then I just kind of went out with the ruffle on the wreath. And then there's actually like a little space. Where you can add a little more. And then the little ridges get smaller. So your little branches are going to get smaller too. I'm going to do the other side before I do the inside. So I've got some branches on the outside. I'm going to add a few on the inside, but I have those ornaments that are going to hang down, so I don't want to, they might be a little bit smaller on the inside than they are on the outside. And I'm still going to come back and put some more, just to get a little bit more texture. So see, I have like a few, and it looks okay, but I think it would look a lot better with a bunch. So I'm going to go back through and just add some on top of the ones I already did. And then it really starts to look like some branches.
Your mom's speaking are really nice. You rescued it.
By the end of this class, you guys will be experts on typing out lines.
Yeah. Being more appreciative of the cookies I see everywhere else.
I know, right? Should not. Easy.
So the last thing that we're going to use the green on, you notice we're jumping around. I do this at home too, depending on what color I'm using. You try to knock out all the things that you need that color. The last thing we're going to put green on is our ornament. And you'll notice on this one, and we're going to add some like little berries, some little red berries to everything. But this one has some pressure piping because you can tell it's like it's bigger. So if you want to try it, you're probably going to want to, now that we've done all the little things, you might want to cut this a little bit bigger. And then you might want to practice. And so what pressure piping is when you put your tip down and you squeeze, you're going to add a lot of pressure. And then as you move your tip, you're going to let go of the pressure so that you get like a nice, almost like teardrop shape. Does that make sense? So let me show you on a clean paper towel because this one's kind of dirty. And then let me show this to you again. Do you see like the, let me show you on a paper towel too. So I have my paper towel down and I'm gonna squeeze and then I'm gonna kind of drag it and let go of the pressure. So it looks like, see how it looks like a teardrop? Feel free to practice that. And once you get a hang of that, I use this for so many things. It helps me on my sweater pattern. Almost all of my greenery, I do some type of pressure piping. But you just put your tip down, squeeze really hard, let it kind of fall on top of itself, and then just kind of drag, and then let go of your pressure. And the grand finale today is going to be this poinsettia that you guys, I promise, are going to love. But it's kind of going to be the same idea of putting pressure and then letting go. So if you're comfortable with that, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put some of these little, like, I guess you call them leaves. They kind of look like leaves, and then come back through and put some straight branches. So the first thing, and this is like my favorite cookie, like I said, is I'm just going to put a line from here and then kind of curve it down to where the ornament and the top of the ornament meet. And that's just going to be like my guide where I put all of my, I guess you call them leaves? I don't know what to call them. Branches, leaves, hollies. I am going to put one on the very end. So I'm going to put my first one here. And so I'm going to just kind of go with the scallop, right? So it has a scallop just like the other cookie did. So I'm going to put a little leaf in each scallop, and then one on each side as well. Let me show you on this one. So it's like in the scallop. So I'm going to put one at the very top, like there is here. And that's going to be my first one. Again, so I'm going to put a lot of pressure, make like almost like a round ball, and then let go. And it kind of fell on top of my line. And then in each little scallop, ooh, that came out weird. Good, scrape that off. I'm going to add one on each scallop.
Oh, she's like, show me. Oh, so like you just squeeze it? You have to keep. Yeah, don't stop. A little bit.
Yeah, just keep practicing. You have plenty of ice cream, so keep practicing until you're comfortable.
This icing is pretty thick because we used it for the branches on the wreath. And so I would say that a little bit thinner icing would give you maybe a little bit of smoother look. But we're gonna add like some twigs and stuff, so it's gonna really fill out nicely with the holly and the other. And it's dry enough, you can do that now. I'm gonna add just like, you know, like on the wreath, how we just added like straight lines? I'm gonna add some in between each like little leaf, so it makes it look like it's kind of just like, I don't know, flourishing, I guess, huh?
That's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
Come back.
Kind of, what a little.
It's okay, you can add some peppers to it.
Okay.
It's gonna be perfect.
That's kind of how I feel about edible glitter. I like to put it on everything, especially around Christmas time. I'm like, just
Do you paint it or like?
it depends. So like they have like what they call, I think it's Wilton's diamond dust. There's other brands too, but it comes like in a little pump.
Oh, so you just spray it?
I also have an airbrush that I put pearl sheen, edible pearl sheen in, and like I'll spray like our snowflakes and snowmen, and then I'll spray the glitter because everything needs glitter, I feel like. But it's fun, and it always adds like a little extra shine.
Yes, it's better.
Okay, so I want to do the poinsettia last. So let's add like our berries, because we're gonna add berries to the ornament and the wreath to kind of finish it out, and then we're gonna actually add the ornaments right to the middle of our wreath. So let's do that. I'm gonna leave the wreath and the ornament right here. And again, you have two reds. One of them has a P on it for poinsettia because it's thicker. And be careful because we're gonna cut this bag in a very specific way to get that poinsettia petal leaf type effect. So don't cut that one. Make sure you cut the right one. And it's thinner too.
Yeah.
And so because we're putting little berries, I'm gonna cut my tip kind of small first. And then when we do our ribbon, I'm gonna cut it bigger. Rather than doing it the opposite way, right? Because you can't go back.
Yeah.
You can't add anything, but you can definitely, and honestly, you can add them anywhere. So like, I'm gonna start on the ornament since we just left off, and I'm just gonna like spread them out, space them. Let me move this so it's out of the way. And they're just little dots.
Perfect little things that cover up boo-boos.
Yeah.
You can put a berry anywhere.
I'm gonna add some berries to the top sprigs too. Cute. And go ahead and put them on your wreath. And I almost forgot, our Rudolph needs a red nose too. So I'm gonna put his nose on as well. I can never get this right. No, it's upside down. I'm just gonna leave it there. Oh, my wreath. And so for the ornaments on the wreath, I kind of did the teardrop too. You could just put a ball, right? Because there's many shapes of ornament. I kind of went the extra mile and switching it on me. That's okay. I'll figure it out. Can you see? Oh, look, there you go. Can you see?
The berries. In the greenery.
Okay, look,
That's okay.
I'll leave there. See how it's kind of shaped like a teardrop too?
Yeah.
I'm gonna do the same thing with, that we kind of, like we did, I called it pressure piping, so it's like a teardrop. Just to kind of make it look like a a fancier ornament. Okay, there we go. Perfect. And this is a great opportunity also to use your toothpick to kind of shape the ornament, because you can, it's forgivable. And you can kind of make it do what you want it to do.
Oh, yes.
That's exactly where we're headed next, is the, yeah, the present. We need a bow.
It looks like my 5-year-old would have done it, but that's okay.
No, I don't think so. That's good. It's all good.
Thank you. So you're booked for orders till like February now, or?
Well, we just kind of put a pause to that just because we like to do more public type events during the holidays. It's a lot of fun, and the classes here at Creations Catering was like a new thing for us as well when Christine and Greg kind of contacted us, and so we really wanted to take the opportunity and kind of build on that partnership. And so we kind of just want to focus on that, and plus we do some other public events, and we were like, okay, let's just focus on these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be, a lot.
I am gonna put a bow on my present. Okay, so we'll start with, there's like gonna be ribbon on the bow. I'll talk about it as we catch up, but we're gonna put like a ribbon on the bow, kind of like a cross, and then we're gonna put some loops at the top. I would, on mine I flooded it. I don't think this is thin enough that we could flood the bow, but I actually think it'd be really pretty with some loops. I've done that before. I don't have a picture, I apologize, but you can see on this one that I do have it outlined with a loop. So it's very, very tricky. Why? Left? That? Oh, right? There we go. So you see that I have loops on top?
Yeah, so you just do the teardrop kind of for the,
No, we're not gonna do,
for the,
unless you want to. I'm just going to, look, I'll show you right now. I'm just gonna kind of do, because I've done this bow, I've decorated this bow a couple different ways. So I'm gonna do a few of those to make it look like one of those bows that has like all the ribbon coming out of it. And we started on that. I did that. So you can either start on that, or if you want to do like the ribbon around the actual present. We'll start with the top. I'm just gonna add another one like right here, and it's gonna cross over. Do you see how it crossed over? And then I'm also gonna add one, I'm gonna add two more on that side to kind of look like
bunchy at the, like clumpy.
Yeah. Well,
toothpick.
yeah.
I would say that a tip that would help is when you're coming back down to finish and you're fixing to let go, make sure you're letting go of your pressure. Because if you still have the pressure, you're gonna have a lot of icing in that spot where you stopped.
So just.
So when you come back around.
I'm gonna add some smaller ones too.
Okay, yeah, because that's been, oh my God,
So I added some little ones inside too.
I'm really picky.
So is she.
Thank you for that. We have our roles, which is, it is true. She does some things better than I do, and I do some things better than she does, and that's just how we function, and we do everything. Yeah, in fact, it works for us because
Sometimes it's a dysfunction.
it's never a dysfunction.
we have it on camera.
So, if there's anyone watching,
That is funny.
And they know us.
That's so funny.
I'm gonna go ahead, and now that I have like the bow at the top, I'm gonna, where my bow kind of met, I'm gonna start putting some lines down. And they don't have to be straight, right? Because have you ever seen a present that was wrapped with like a string of ribbon?
Yeah.
And you kind of wrap it around, and I've seen it to where like they crisscross kind of like, so I'm gonna kind of do that. So like I am gonna put one straight down the middle. But then the next one, I'm actually going to start on the left and go really close if you can, but I'm gonna cross over and end on the right. Does that make sense? So I'm gonna start to the left of it right here. And I'm just gonna crisscross it. And my icing broke, but that's okay because I'm gonna put one more on top.
Oh, okay.
Just so it doesn't, you're not laying them straight. You can lay them straight, but I think that, you know, if you were to tie a present with a bunch of ribbon, it would kind of look staggered.
Yeah.
Mine came out so I'm just filling it in.
There you go. It's all good.
And of course, I'm going to do the same thing going across to kind of finish up, or else that kid is going to be able to slide that ribbon off and open that present early. That's what my kids would do.
Right?
And then they would slide it back on and pretend like they never saw what was inside.
Yeah, but you're like, I know who that's right. Can't fool me.
Mm-hmm. Let me see it. I love it.
I know, it's very cute.
And see, I'm really glad that we had some cookies flooded
Yeah.
so that we can decorate on top of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes
It's an edible present. You can eat it. Okay, so our reindeer has his nose. Our present has bow. And And our ornament has some like holly berries, and so does our wreath. I'll wait because the next part for our poinsettia is super important that we cut our bag correctly.
Were terrifying except for like the leaves of that poinsettia. Like it was terrifying.
So we did a class in November and we made a sunflower with a very similar technique. And I think that was the most liked cookie because it looked difficult. And then when they did it, they were like, oh my gosh, because it's not difficult, I promise. The trick is to cut your bag correctly. So I have this piece of paper and I'll probably use it to show you. Oh, you're fine. Okay, can you guys see this?
You could get your cookie cutters.
Sure, yeah. A lot of different places. We have a few favorite. Truly Mad Plastics has some really good shapes, and we prefer plastic versus metal because we find with the metal they will lose their shape. The more you use them, especially if you're like cutting a triangle, it gets warped and then you cut that cookie and then you try to flood it and try a border on it and it's uneven and you're flying and then it's not fun. So we find that you just have to be careful because like with Truly Mad Plastics or like I think it's Kaleidocuts, Killer Zebras is another one. If you get them too hot, they'll warp. So you just want to wash them.
I put a whole sink full of cutters with hot water, and it all just like
Melted, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Do they have like different size cutters? Cause like you know the cookies.
The average cutter, if you're looking and you're trying to order, is 3.5 inches.
3.5. Okay.
And they usually will measure from the tallest or the widest part is how they determine that.
Yeah.
And so 3.5 inches is what you want to go for. 4 inches and your cookies are massive to get really big. And 3, they get kind of tiny. 3.5 is the standard size.
Yeah.
And I will say though, a lot of people like to they're called minis.
Minis, yeah.
And they package them together as a set. So like if that's what you're trying to do, you would want to look up like mini cookie cutters.
Yeah.
We like the 3 to 4 inch range. We feel like that's not too big. It fits most of our bags, right? Because you're gonna have to bag them. Okay, so the larger triangle, this is our tip. So if you want to take your tip or take your poinsettia bag and with the seam, flatten it out. Okay, so I'm gonna, what's the best way? Is this the best way? Okay, or this way. Okay, do you see the smaller triangle? That is how we're going to cut the bag. So it's one direction this way and one direction that way. I will say though that you may end up cutting it and we can cut it more because are they leaves or petals? They're petals, right? They're big on a poinsettia, right? We don't want tiny, tiny. If you don't want to cut it yet, what we can do is I can cut mine and Susan can walk around and show you what it looks like if you want to do that. But again, so you're going to cut this way to a point and this way to a point.
So I go towards the top.
So you're going to go towards the middle. I would go a little bit further up,
Okay. So like this.
and then go on the other side. Yep.
Yep.
Yep, exactly. Perfect. Okay, hold it there. I know, right? You're like, what was the point of that? Also, you're also like, it was already pointy.
Do I make it?
You can if you want. It might not make a huge difference.
Okay. All right.
I'm gonna cut mine too. I wanna make sure it's big enough too, because our sunflower petals were a little bit smaller, and the poinsettia, you definitely wanna cover up the whole cookie. So there's a couple different ways you can cut these bags to like accomplish what you want to do. But this is how I cut the bags to make like leaves. If like I'm doing roses, and you can cut it real tiny, you can get like tiny leaves. And you can look them up, there's other ways you can cut it. The only way I haven't figured out how to cut it to where I like it is a rose. I've seen people do it. No, just give me a tip. That's the one time I'll use a tip, is when I'm doing a rose. Okay, so we can practice first, because you'll want to see how this comes out. So I'm going to get a clean paper towel. Also, I'm going to move some of this. Clean my workspace is messy. Also, this is where we're going to use the little fold non-parallels on your... Okay, so to practice, with the seam, when you pipe it out, it's gonna be flat against, you're not gonna wanna turn your bag this way. You're gonna want the seam, I guess, horizontal with your surface. And when you pipe it out, I would say touch it, the tip to your surface. And you'll see as it comes out the sides, but it kind of stays in the middle. And so what you do is put pressure, and then when you let go, that wasn't a very good example because it's on the paper towel, but when you let go, it'll come to a point. You got it? How's it going? Good? Okay. If anyone is having trouble, I would be more than happy to troubleshoot for you. And it could be, if you end up turning your tip or it's off to the side and the points are off, it's not gonna work. So you have to, so I'll clean my tip off and just make sure it's like, it has that triangle shape to it still. Who's ready to put it on the cookie?
I guess.
We're gonna wait just a second. No?
I don't know about this.
Let me see it. Show me your paper towel.
I don't know. This is not a leaf.
So, and if you feel like it's too, like if you want it bigger, just put more pressure on it. And then when you get to the very end, just let off your pressure. And if it doesn't come to a point, you can get your toothpick and, let me do one on the cookie. So with the poinsettia, we're gonna work our way in. Because if we start in the center, it's gonna be hard to get some petals underneath. So we're gonna do the outside petals first, but I'm still gonna start pretty far in. So I'm gonna make sure my tip, again, is facing the right way with the triangle, just like that. And then pretty close to the center, I'm gonna put a lot of pressure. Listen, mine wasn't that great, but I promise you, when you start putting them in and the layers get there, so I'm gonna put one just right next to it. And yeah, we're just gonna go all the way around. Yeah, they don't have to curl up. So I've got like this outline, right?
Great leaf. Oh my goodness.
Whoa, beautiful. Thank you.
So. Okay, so, and then I just realized that we have green, so let's cut our bags when we're done and put leaves on the poinsettia. I think you guys will like that. Okay, so now that I've done the outside, I'm just gonna put one on the inside in between each. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'm gonna clean off my tip again because I couldn't even see where the triangle was. These are gonna be a little bit smaller. Don't move it too much. There we go. And I still have like a little bit of cookie left in the center, so I'm gonna put like 2 or 3 more. And once I do that, I'm gonna put those little gold sprinkles in the middle.
Gold balls.
Yeah, I think technically, what are they called? Non-perils or they're sprinkles to me, right? I gotta fix my tip.
I had to redo it because it wasn't going in the right sheet. But you're doing good. You're doing good.
Okay. Thank you. And then you put your little balls
Ta-da!
in. Oh, that's so cute.
And we do have time, and I think it would be very pretty. So the trick on the leaf,
We're all trying to look at the ice.
I want to see some poinsettias. Can I see? Let me see. That's awesome. See, they're so pretty, and they're so easy.
Yeah. It's not as intimidating as I thought.
See? That's why we left it for last. We left it for last on purpose, because it's just, I love it.
Yeah, that's good.
And so, again, think about it. So, you can do it, yeah, you can do it with, like we did it last month, like I said, with yellow. And we left the center was not, we didn't put it all the way in the center, we just put like brown icing with brown sprinkles.
Yeah.
And left it a little bit bigger, and it looked just like a cute sunflower. Okay, so we have time, and I want to show you the difference with the pressure you put on the bag. Okay, so you have your green, and it's the perfect consistency for this. Flatten it out to where like you can see the tip and there's no icing, so that when you cut it, you can kind of tell what you're doing. So with the poinsettia, I made sure that like I kind of just squeezed and it came out, right? Because I didn't want it to look like a leaf. But if you add kind of like some movement in your arm, it'll add a ripple and make it look more like a leaf, which is what we're gonna do. So you're gonna cut it the same way. I'm gonna cut mine a little bit smaller. So not as big. I think it would be fine if you did, but there's less cookie that we're gonna cover. And so if you want to practice doing it like how I said, right, if you make a movement that goes up and, let me do it on here. So if can you see that? Yeah, so if I move my arm and I move the tip, it comes out and it kind of ripples.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and it gives it a more of a leaf kind of look.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Where do you put the?
So what you're gonna do is you're gonna work your way underneath where there's blank spaces, right? So here's the poinsettia, and I'm gonna put my tip
Inside.
Yeah, like I'm gonna put it right here. Whoops, I don't like that one.
Oh, I see. What's the last one? Oh.
Oh yeah, especially since it's a little bit thicker.
Oh, you gave it to her?
I don't, if you guys wanna see that. So I put like a green leaf.
There we go. Ooh, that's pretty.
You're hired.
What are you doing next week?
Yeah, right? So they sell metal tips that do this. But how cool is it that you can just cut the bag?
And that's,
Super simple. And then you don't have to wash extra things.
There are 3 stores in San Antonio that carry supplies, including cutters, and one is called AGS, one is called Over the Top Cakes, Sheer Celebrations. All 3 of those you can get everything you need to do cookies.
And if you aren't comfortable shopping, you can find all of this stuff on Amazon. Like if you would rather not go in a store.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joann's will carry it, and Michael's,
It's exciting. No, that makes me feel good. That means you learned something new and you can walk away with it and use it.
You should see the one she did before this class.
and wait, how do you get the colors? Those are from the sugar or?
So AmeriColor is, you can't, it's a little more, as far as level goes, it's like next level. So you're not gonna be able to find it in Joann's and Michael's.
Yeah.
You can find it in like Sheer Celebration. Actually, I don't know if they have AmeriColor. I know AGS does. That's over, okay, so they do.
Is it like a gel or like?
Yeah, it's a gel. It's a gel. And it's just like the Wilton gel. And you can buy the Wilton gel. And if you want to use that to get comfortable, I mean, they're fine colors. We tend to just use a lot of AmeriColor. They have more colors.
Yeah.
So like if you go into like one of the, like especially AGS, they have every color you could imagine. Which makes it easy because we've become ourselves a little bit of mixologists when it comes to color, because sometimes you don't want a bright green, you want a muted green, and so add a toothpick of black here, or add a little brown here, or I don't want bright pink, I want rose, and so you have to kind of come up, but AmeriColor sells colors that are already kind of like that, so you don't have to do much tweaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, AmeriColor, and you can buy that on Amazon too. And something we didn't talk about, but we like to put white food coloring in most of our like bases, especially white, because what tends to happen is, like, I know the cream of tartar in the recipe will help keep that white color, but sometimes you still might get some discoloration. Your icing might turn yellow if you're using white. So if you add white, it sounds weird, right? It's like, why are you adding white to white? But it gives it that bright look, and it keeps the color from discoloring a little bit. Now, if you're making like red, black, or like a dark green, I wouldn't put white in your base, but sometimes I'll just throw the white in there as I'm making it. It helps also from your colors bleeding.
Yeah.
Because if you have colors that are wet and you've put them together on a cookie, one of the deeper color might bleed into the lighter color. But if you put color in that lighter color, like the white, it'll block that darker color from bleeding in there.
Okay. How long does it take you to do like a dozen?
So, well, from start to finish, so this set, believe it or not, I did in one day, which is not normal. I baked them, flooded them, and decorated them, which is too stressful. I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
Because you're working with almost wet cookies, trying to decorate them as well.
Yeah.
So you definitely want a day to bake and probably flood, because you can bake and flood in the same day, as long as your cookie, you don't want to flood a warm cookie, because the icing is gonna melt off.
Yes.
Or like by a window or whatever, or just like wait until they cool off, like, in the kitchen. But I would say let your cookies dry from their flood overnight and then try to decorate the next day. But yeah, it can, for a dozen cookies, like this was 6 and it took me almost a good chunk of the day just because there's so many steps involved. And making icing is one of like, it's that step that I don't like because it's the step right before I get to decorate. And I just, like, I love the decorating part so much, and like, I don't want to mix the icing, and I don't want to put them in the bags, you know, but it's just that step, I mean, you have to do it. So, and it can be time consuming making the colors you want. And I know some people will even mix, they'll make their colors, and then they'll put a drop of each color that they made into the other colors so that this, and this sounds weird, but like, I guess so the colors all fit together. I know.
We also brought, I have some extra set of cookies and icing, and you can buy a set of the same 6 cookies and all the icings for $20 if you'd like to take another set home with you. And all your icings are,
Yes, we're not going to reuse your icing. That is yours. Wow, I made a mess. Do you mind if I take a picture? Can I take some pictures? Can you be in it?
Oh, sure.
You don't have to. If you just like lift it up.